Hello everyone, welcome back.
to Mediplacebo.
So in this video, I'll be covering about the esophagus. The esophagus is a structure which has been derived from the foregut. Now, apart from esophagus, the foregut also develops into structures such as stomach, the small intestine, liver, and various other gastrointestinal structures. The esophagus is a tube-like structure and it is 25 centimeter in length and it originates posterior to the lower border of the cricoid cartilage. Now, the cricoid cartilage is a cartilage supporting the trachea. So here in this diagram, you can note that the lower border of the cricoid cartilage, here I have highlighted in white color. From here on the posterior aspect starts the esophagus and it is present at the vertebral level C6 up till C7 and so it is also referred as the cervical esophagus. Then, moving downwards from the C7 up to the T3 to T4 vertebral level, the esophagus runs posterior to the heart as well as the aortic arch, which ends at the T4 vertebral level. So, here the end of the aortic arch is marked by the T4 vertebral level, and then the esophagus runs anterior to the aorta. So, here in this diagram, you can note that the esophagus is running posterior while after crossing the aortic arch here, it moves anterior to the esophagus. Then moving downwards, it will continue its path up till the diaphragm where it will insert at T10 vertebral level here and this point is referred as the esophageal hiatus. So, this esophageal hiatus is located on the diaphragm and is present at the T10 vertebral level. And further, we have the abdominal part of the esophagus that is approximately 1.25 centimeter starting from the esophageal hiatus up till the cardiac part of the stomach. So, the esophagus, we can classify it into the three groups. The first one being the cervical from C6 up till C7. Then we have the thoracic part, which is extending all the way from T1 up till T10. And then we have the abdominal part of the esophagus, which is extending from the T10 up till the cardiac part of the stomach. So it is somewhere around T11 or T12 vertebral level. So here in this diagram, I have drawn a simplified view of the whole picture which I wanted to tell you. So here we have the thoracic part of the esophagus starting from the lower part of the C7 cervical vertebrae up till the esophageal hiatus. And then here we have the abdominal part of the esophagus. So this is the abdominal esophagus. Now also I wanted to show you the lateral view of the esophagus. Now, the esophagus will continue its path posteriorly up till
The aortic arch.
and then it will move anteriorly, which can be seen here in this diagram. Now, it is placed at almost the central position, but it is present posterior to the aortic arch,
And
is present anterior to the descending thoracic aorta. So, this part is the descending thoracic aorta. Now, moving ahead, the esophagus has four constructions in it. Now, the esophagus has presence of four constructions in it. The first one being the cricopharyngeal sphincter, the second one being at the level of the aortic arch, the third one present at the left mainstem bronchus, and the fourth one present at the diaphragm. Now here I have also mentioned the distance of the sphincters from the incisors. So the cricopharyngeal sphincter is 6 inches away from the incisor. Then the sphincter present at the aortic arch is present 9 inches from the incisors. Then the sphincter at the left mainstem bronchi is present 11 inches away from the incisors, and the sphincter at the diaphragm, that is the gastroesophageal sphincter, is present 15 inches away from the incisors. Now, the distance from the incisor is important since it helps us to allocate the position at which we can perform endoscopy. Now, you can remember all the constructions by the mnemonic, that is ABCD. So, A stands for the aortic arch, B stands for the bronchus, that is the left mainstem bronchus, C stands for the cricopharyngeal sphincter, D stands for the diaphragm. Now, also, the cricopharyngeal sphincter is also sometimes referred as the upper esophageal sphincter, or the junction of the pharynx and the esophagus, that is the pharyngoesophageal junction. Now let us take a look at the cross-sectional view of the esophagus. The cross-sectional view of the esophagus at the cervical level have anteriorly the presence of the trachea and the right and left recurrent laryngeal nerves. So these are the anterior structures which are present anterior to the esophagus. Then on the left hand side of the esophagus we have the presence of the left thoracic duct. So here we have the left thoracic duct present on the left hand side, and along with the left thoracic duct we have the presence of the left lobe of the thyroid gland, and on the posterior aspect we have the presence of the vertebral body, that is C6 to C7, and we have the presence of the longus colli muscle which connects the two lobes, and on the right hand side we have the presence of the right thyroid lobe. Now here we have the cross section of the thoracic part of the esophagus. So here we can note this is the parietal pleura. Here in blue we have our lungs. Here I have drawn only the mainstem bronchioles, and here we have in brown the esophagus. Posterior to the esophagus lies the aorta, which is the descending aorta, and since it is present in the thoracic cavity it is also referred as the thoracic aorta. Then here we have the azygous vein, which carries the deoxygenated blood from the esophagus and intercostal spaces up to the superior vena cava. So here is a magnified view of the same diagram which I drawn previously. So here we have the T8 vertebral level, and anterior to the vertebral column lies the azygous system, that is the azygous vein, draining the venous drainage from the right hand side of the intercostal spaces as well as the esophagus. And on the right hand side we have the presence of the thoracic aorta, and anterior to both the structures we have the presence of the esophagus. So here we have the esophagus, and then we have the bronchioles, and supporting these bronchioles we have the presence of the cartilages. So these are the cartilaginous rings. Now regarding the esophageal blood supply, we can divide again it into the three portions, that is the cervical part, the thoracic part and the abdominal part. The cervical part of the esophagus is supplied by the esophageal branches of the inferior thyroid artery, whereas the venous supply is by the inferior thyroid vein. So here in this diagram you can note that we have the esophageal branches of the inferior thyroid artery, and the inferior thyroid artery, as we know, is the branch of the thyrocervical trunk, which is in turn originating from the subclavian artery. Then regarding the inferior thyroid vein, here we have another diagram. So you can note here that we have the left brachiocephalic vein, which gives off the inferior thyroid vein, which is supplying the thyroid gland, the two lobes, that is the left lobe as well as the right lobe. Then the thoracic portion of the esophagus is supplied by the arteries via the esophageal branches of the thoracic aorta, whereas the venous drainage is by the azygous and the hemiazygous system, that is the azygous and hemiazygous veins. So here in this diagram you can note that we have the descending part of the thoracic aorta, and it gives off the branches to the esophagus, and these are known as the esophageal branches of the thoracic aorta. So here we have the aortic esophageal arteries. And regarding the azygous and the hemiazygous veins, the azygous vein takes the venous drainage from the right hand side, whereas the hemiazygous system along with the accessory hemiazygous system takes the venous drainage from the left hand side. Then in the abdominal portion we have the blood supply, that is the arterial supply by the esophageal branches of the left gastric arteries, and the venous drainage of the abdominal portion of the esophagus is by the left gastric vein. Now the left gastric vein is sometimes also referred as the coronary vein, which is a small vein draining into the portal circulation. Now, the portal circulation is made up of the main branches, which is the superior mesenteric vein and the splenic vein, whereas along with it we have the short branches also draining into it, which are the inferior mesenteric vein and the left and right gastric veins. So, these are the important structures which are involved in the formation of the portal circulation. Then moving ahead, we have the lymphatic drainage. Now, the lymphatic drainage of the cervical part is drained by the deep cervical lymph nodes. The thoracic part of the esophagus is drained by the posterior mediastinal nodes, whereas the esophageal drainage of the abdominal part is by the left gastric nodes. And then we have the innervation. The innervation of the esophagus is mostly by the vagus nerve and its branches. Now, the vagus nerve innervates the esophageal muscles and the glands and is responsible for initiation of the peristalsis movement and the glandular activity, that is the secretion of the mucus. Now, the peristalsis, as we know, it is a rhythmic movement of contraction and relaxation for passage of bolus, which is made up of the saliva and the food. Now, apart from it, the striated muscles which are present in the muscular layer are supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. That is, on both sides we have presence of left recurrent laryngeal nerve as well as the right recurrent laryngeal nerve, and both of them are the branches of the vagus nerve itself. And it is mostly present in the upper one third of the esophagus, and the lower half of the esophagus is supplied by the esophageal plexus. Now, moving towards the histology of the esophagus, the innermost layer of the esophagus, that is the mucosal layer, and upon it we have the presence of the submucosal layer. In the submucosal layer, we have the presence of the glandular epithelium, that are the glands, and along with the glands, we have the presence of the mucinous plexus and the blood vessels. So, these are the blood vessels, and along with it, we have the presence of the mucinous plexus. Now, the function of the mucinous plexus is to maintain and regulate the secretions from the glands. So, the glandular epithelium is controlled with the help of the mucinous plexus, and along with it, the mucinous plexus is also responsible for maintaining the electrolyte balance and the water balance in the esophageal lumen surface. That is, this inner surface. It is known as the luminal surface. Then, upon it, we have the presence of the muscular layer. Now, the muscular layer is made up of the inner circular layer and the outer longitudinal layer. And this muscular layer is responsible for the peristaltic movements, which occur in the esophagus and are maintained with the help of the Oripax plexus, which are present in between the inner layer and the outer layer, that is, present between the inner circular layer here and the outer longitudinal layer. So, in between it, we have the presence of the Oripax plexus. So, just to remind you, the plexus is nothing but the network of neurons which is responsible for maintaining the functions of the structures. So, the mucinous plexus is responsible for maintaining and regulating the secretion from the glands as well as the electrolyte balance and the water balance, and the Oripax plexus is responsible for the peristaltic movements. Now, the striated muscles are located in the proximal one third, whereas in the distal two third we have the presence of the smooth muscles in case of the esophagus. Lastly, we have the presence of the adventitia, that is the outermost layer, and it is made up of the dense connective tissue which has its components as the elastic fibers. Moving towards the last part of our video, I have considered here three clinicals related to the esophagus. The first one being the Zenker's diverticulum, the second one being the tracheoesophageal fistula, and the third one being the achalasia. Now, in the first one, that is the Zenker's diverticulum, I want to point out the two important muscles of the pharynx, that is the cricopharyngeus, which can be seen here highlighted in yellow color, and the other one being the thyropharyngeus muscle, which I am highlighting here in the blue color. Now, as you can see here, there is a outpouching. Now, this outpouching is nothing but the part of the esophagus which has entered from the space present between the thyropharyngeus and the cricopharyngeus. Now, the space which is present between the thyropharynges and the cricopharynges, here highlighted in white color, is referred as the Killian's dehiscence. So, the space present between the cricopharynges and the thyropharynges is referred as the Killian's dehiscence, and since it is a weak area and a open area, it has high chances of developing a diverticulum, and this diverticulum we refer it as the Zenker's diverticulum. So it is the most common site of the formation of the diverticulum. And in this view, you can take a look that we have another type of diverticulum which can be found, and it is known as the Killian-Jamieson diverticulum. Now, the Killian-Jamieson diverticulum is an outpouching from the lateral wall of the proximal cervical esophagus, and the Killian-Jamieson diverticulum is very rare as compared to that of the Zenker's diverticulum. Then, moving towards the next clinical condition, that is the tracheoesophageal fistula. Now, embryologically, both our esophagus and the trachea, that is here we have our esophagus and here we have our trachea. Now, embryologically, both trachea and esophagus are fused with one another, but at the time of separation, if the esophagus fails to separate from the trachea, then it can lead to a condition known as the tracheoesophageal fistula. That is fusion of both the trachea and the lower part of the esophagus. So here we have the tracheoesophageal fistula. Now, depending upon the location, we can have different tracheoesophageal fistula. So due to this condition, it leads to the atresia, that is degeneration of the esophagus. And the last condition which we have is the achalasia. Now, achalasia is a condition, and in this condition, the nerves fail to push the blood forward with the help of the peristaltic movements, and due to it, it leads to the dilation of the esophagus and accumulation of the food in the esophagus itself, leading to the fermentation of the food in the esophagus itself, or either emesis, that is vomiting out of the food, and it is treated with the help of some medical procedures such as surgery and giving medications such as calcium channel blockers and anti-anginal and vasodilators. So that is it for this video. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe, and do follow us on Instagram for new such medical related content. Thank you.